Welcome, everybody. First of all, Assalamu alaikum. The meaning of this is peace be upon everybody, and everybody is welcome to join in today. And I will be putting the link in the chat later on for people to jump on and raise their concerns, positive and negatives. First of all, my name is Mohammed from CovFF, and we're also live on Rumble. And my channel's name on Rumble is Abu Shuaib. Abu means father of, Shuaib is my oldest son. So it's basically a nickname is Abu Shuaib. That's on Rumble. So guys, we've got a very interesting show today. But before we kick it off and before I introduce these amazing individuals, I want to play a clip which I want to lighten up the mood. And let me just add it onto the screen. Let me know if you guys can hear the sound on this audio. John?
Cable TV once and for all. This
Okay, guys, that's just a taster. If you want to watch the rest of that, I'll definitely recommend you to go and check out Russell Howard, a very funny stand-up comedian. But nevertheless, we'll move on quickly. On my right-hand side, the top right-hand corner, is Paul Bedson, who I've actually went out and filmed Canvas here in Folsall. And below that is John, who is from Nuneaton. And again, on my bottom left is Dr. Muhammad Ali, also from the city of Coventry, my beloved city of culture. We've got a very interesting show, brothers and sisters, and I really want these gentlemen to speak freely about their experiences being out there on the ground. First of all, Paul, welcome to the show. And of course, Assalamu alaikum. Speak freely about your experience, being somebody who's representing the Workers' Party of Britain.
Well, alaikum salam. Thank you, Bro Mohammed. Well, I'm not representing anymore. I have represented the people over the last 5 weeks since the election was called. Now I'm just a prospective parliamentary candidate, no longer a parliamentary candidate. But we work on in Coventry, and we've got a new boss, Keir Starmer, same as the old boss, Richard Sunak. I think people will soon find out. But we did a great job in Coventry. We did all right. We put a dent in the Labour vote. We stopped them getting over 50% of the vote in both cases in Coventry South and East. I got in the top 50 of the 152 candidates that stood. We didn't get the vote share we'd like, but I got over 1,000 votes, made 1,000 friends in Coventry. It's been a journey, and we didn't lose either. Me and Dr. Muhammad Ali respectively beat the Trade Union and Socialist Coalition. I beat their chairman by some 220 votes, and Dr. Muhammad Ali beat the Social Democrat Party by a good 400 votes or something. He almost beat all three. Two independents as well combined in their vote share. So we didn't lose either. We both came sixth, and we assured the Workers' Party of Britain sixth place in the political league tables. And over 200,000 votes were cast for us, giving us now hopefully a place in the polling, a place where we will get media coverage, or we get more than the silence that we had over the media blackout of the Workers' Party during this campaign. As I say, you want me to talk about what we were doing on the streets to get those votes and make a 2.8% vote share imprint in Coventry East. How we got actually a lot more than the average. Well, the average was actually 3.48, I think, across the board. But that included a lot of big vote shares, including Jodie McIntyre, who was actually our highest vote share candidate. He came within 700 votes of taking Jess Phillips' seat in Birmingham Yardley. If the election had been called in October, Jodie McIntyre would have been our MP in Birmingham Yardley in November. I think that's why this election was called early. They were afraid of the Workers' Party. We spooked them, and we have spooked them now.
Yeah, 100%. Like I said, I met you about probably a week or so ago, and I still fondly kind of like remember that, really do, and how it all kind of transpired to when we met outside the restaurant until now. It's been an amazing journey. and I hope you continue with this journey because people will recognize your face. Like we was outside the polling station on the Folsall Road. You were the only particular representative out there meeting the people. We did not see any other party, and we were there for about 2 hours, right? And it was like the peak time where people were finishing work, going to the polling station to give, put the votes in, and you were the only person there interacting with the people, which it was outstanding. And I think you did a fantastic job, Paul. So well done for that. And it takes a lot of nerve.
I would just like to thank all the community in Foleshill, yourself, and all my friends, everybody I met on the campaign, and everybody who took the time to vote for me. I deeply appreciate the passion that you put into putting your X in my box. Thank you.
Fantastic. I know Brother Mustafa's is kind of like his time is quite limited. But Brother Mustafa, let me introduce Brother Mustafa to yourselves and to the audience. Brother Mustafa is somebody who actually has been highly backing this show, and we've done some political streams in the past, and he kind of like gave me some ideas regarding the Conservative Party and other shadowy figures within the government. And Brother Mustafa is a very interesting person. His resume is amazing. It really is. And Brother Mustafa, Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and good evening, or rather good morning, guests as well who come onto the platform. I'm sure I'm not worthy of the introduction that Mohmmed has given me, but yeah, it's very interesting, the show which is taking place today. I'm based in London, so yeah, I look forward to our discussion going forward.
Now, yeah. Also, Brother Mustafa, I really want to kind of get you more involved in this because you are, I would say, somebody who's a lot learned in this topic than I am. And then once we met, you opened a lot of doors for me. You kind of, opened my eyes a bit more. To speak freely about what we have done in the past as like a YouTube channel, and how we kind of like try to expose certain individuals within the hierarchy of Britain. Feel free to speak, brother.
Yeah, thank you for giving me this opportunity to do so. So, in effect, I mean, I've been observing political issues for a number of years now, and I've come to a certain formulation which has been corroborated furthermore by other authorities. I mean, I believe firmly that Rishi Sunak got into power as a result of not him being elected, as we all know. When he had a face-off with Liz Truss, we know that Liz Truss won the Tory party candidacy, but she was obviously displaced after several weeks as Prime Minister. And then Rishi Sunak was brought in. So just in regards to that, these election results that we've had, it's pretty clear, well, rather to me, it's rather very clear that I don't believe for one moment and these election results signify this, and it shows the state of the country's thinking, that had Rishi Sunak gone for the election instead of Liz Truss, then I firmly believe that he would have not been elected due to the colour of his skin. And this has now been accentuated and shown in the election, where a lot of Tory voters have now gone over to the Reform Party, which has picked up a huge amount of votes, but it's still complaining of underrepresentation in terms, I think it got a total of 4 million votes. And a lot of those votes have come from the Tory party gone through to Labour, hence their landslide majority. But they did pick up a huge amount of votes, 4 million votes, but they've only got, I think, something like 1% of the representation in Parliament. So, I mean, I've got my own particular theories as to who and why Rishi Sunak was actually placed as the Prime Minister and the head of the Conservative Party post the demise of Liz Truss. And this was, in my view, propelled. And I'd like to get your gentlemen's views on the influence of Michael Gove in particular. I do believe, along with Margaret Thatcher, he's probably the most influential British politician post the Second World War. And that's a massive statement to make. However, I do feel this very, very strongly. When I initially started to speak to Brother Mohmmed in regards to this, a good few years ago now. I don't think I don't think it was really understood at that particular time. But this gentleman, as I made mention, is, in my view, the most influential British politician post Second World War, along with Margaret Thatcher. And he was actually introduced into politics on a mainstream front in 2005 in David Cameron's government, if I recall, where he was he was installed as the Education Secretary, the major proponent of the reform of the children's structural learning about same-sex education in particular. So he was a catalyst for this. This was Michael Gove, the very individual who got David Cameron back into a position of ministerial position as the Foreign Secretary, going back a few months, where he when there was a cabinet reshuffle. So subsequent to this, I do firmly believe that he was the person who instigated. He's known as the levelling minister, but he's the one who decides who comes in and out of governments. And there was a recent, well, not so recent, but maybe 6 to 7 months ago, a YouTube interview with an eminent Labour MP, which I won't name, but she appeared on the breakfast show on the BBC, and she made mention, which just corroborated my points, that these very shadowy figures who decide who runs for the position of prime minister, what policies he has, what the length of service that he will do, everything is preordained in terms of this. So Michael Gove was the instigator of displacing Liz Truss. Rishi Sunak got into power, and we know full well the Tories received a crushing defeat yesterday. And I think this is very, very important to understand the psyche of the country. They've actually moved away from the Conservatives, gone to reform, and we know reform. I mean, I'll do shows regularly on different platforms, social media platforms, on YouTube as well, which really shows that the people here are not happy with immigration, for example. It's actually, and it's frightening to think for the ethnic minorities that, 4 million people are of this strong view, where they now, who are traditionally conservative voters, have gone over to Reform Party in the and we know essentially what Nigel is, even though he's got his own mask to the contrary. And I do get this vibe, being on social media outlets, particularly, and presenting shows, that the population are not happy at all with the influx of immigration, even though immigrants have played such a fundamental role in the growth of the British economy post Second World War in particular. So, these are absolute concerns. But Michael Gove, who recently was going to step down anyway from his position, and now his hand has been forced. So I do believe that he's a very major influencer. He's the one who decided lots of the policies. He's the one who got Rishi Sunak into power, knowing full well that the British electorate would have never voted for him. And now he's no longer prime minister. And I think this is indicative of that. It wasn't my intent just to speak about the colour issue here, but it just gives you a slight indication of how the public is thinking. And these are ominous times, I think, going forward. Nigel Farage did make comments yesterday that this is just the beginning. And, they're going to be the next people standing up to Labour, and they're going to try to de-seat Labour. And I think the way things are moving, in the next, just say maybe 5 to 10 years, I wouldn't be surprised if reforms become the number one opponents to, or major political party in recognition to being opponents to the government. And I wouldn't be surprised again if they even have the possibility of even coming into power within this time frame. So these are some things that we really need to consider. I've just become recently aware of the parties such as the Workers' Party, which I was totally unfamiliar with up until a few days ago, where my friends were actually encouraging me to vote for them. So I'm here to learn as well, not just to make certain statements. I do believe that we need to work together in order to incorporate a bit more tolerance and understanding. But there are within these elections, I can see some ominous vibes occurring.
Thank you, Brother Mustafa. Please feel free to stay here. I really want to share some of your thoughts to the panel also, but I appreciate that. Moving on to John. John, welcome all the way from Nuneaton, a stone throw from where I am. Same question to you. How do you feel your canvassing and your efforts, how have they been received within the people of Nuneaton?
Yeah, so I'll take that question, and then I was very interested in some of what Mustafa that as well. Canvassing.
John, I
mean,
think you're buffering a bit. I think it's your internet. I think you're buffering a bit, but you're okay now. But when you talk, you kind of your picture freezes and your sound kind of buffers. So
okay,
so,
is the same thing happening now?
it's a bit better now. It's a bit
I
better.
just moved something away from my yeah, okay. So hopefully it'll be okay, but let me know if it's not. With the time frame that we've had, you know, the canvassing has had to be concentrated in certain areas. We've had to really, you know, kind of pick and choose how we target specific areas. Obviously, we've looked at demographics within that. I myself feel that I've worked very hard to engage people, and I think this is the strength that we have. To pick up on your point, Matt, I think there hasn't been a lot of engagement with the public. There hasn't been a lot of open debate. Canvassing on the streets of Nuneaton, quite a lot of people. And I'll just share with you that, I mean, Nuneaton has quite a large white working class population that are really very disillusioned. Not there's a lot of people below the poverty line, and there is a lot of kind of I would say not racism. And I want to come back to Mustafa's point around this. I've noticed that certain white voters have become quite abusive once they realize that they've kind of been out. So if people are, when you venture to ask, and they don't want to say when they're going to vote reform, which I find it very interesting. So I think a lot more people would have voted reform than I spoke to that admitted that they were going to. And this is where I want to come back to the point that Mustafa was making, is I think there are sinister forces at work, but I think you can only deal with what's in front of you, right? So I want to share with you that the reform approached Khalil Ahmed, who was with a counting station, to try and recruit him, and we discussed it, and we felt that they were just basically looking for a token Muslim in their party. This is important because and they have their public face. And I think that, you know, the private conversations are obviously not the same as the public face. I think the point that I want to make is that, and I hope you can hear me clearly, is that the Equality Act 2010, when it came, open racism underground, because it's a crime to be openly racist, right? So they've had 24 candidates deselected because of saying homophobic or racist things. So they clearly have to be very careful about how they present themselves. They're taking a fine line between their politics and their ignorance and their sort of, if you like, racism. So they're learning how to play that one. And the sad thing about it is it drives the racism underground. So you can't challenge it.
Okay, John. I think you've still got that tab open at the bottom. If you want to remove that, you can. Maybe it might make your Wi-Fi
Yeah.
or the connection a bit better. But you were buffering a bit, like you know, freezing, and the audio was cracking a bit. But you can remove that from the bottom, and we'll put the mic on to brother and Dr.
Okay.
Muhammad Ali Said. Welcome to the show. This is the aftermath of all your hard work. How do you feel, and how can the Workers' Party actually gain from what you've actually accomplished so far? Dr. Muhammad, you're muted. You've muted yourself. You need to unmute yourself. Or is he on the phone? I'm not sure.
He's trying to unmute himself.
Yeah, he's muted himself, so I can't unmute him, I don't think.
Am I still buffering when I talk?
You're fine now.
It was the YouTube video that was on in the background. Sorry about that.
All right.
There we go.
Yay, we got it.
Awesome.
I had a number of windows open, and I was like,
Yeah.
how do I get back to this one? So, apologize. So look, the thing is, it's I don't think anyone of us, I speak for myself, actually. Let me speak for myself. I didn't enter into this election with any sort of illusion that I would win. You know, I entered it with the understanding that I actually had no chance of winning, right? Because it was announced 6 weeks ago, and, you know, with no political experience, no social media experience, or even channels, you know, apart from my LinkedIn, no team, right? If you look at other political, and if you go on to my esteemed MP of Coventry South, who sits there today, if you go onto her, you know, her social media, her Instagram or whatever, she's got like over 300,000 followers, and, you know, just on that alone, I don't know about the other channels. So, and no political experience whatsoever in terms of myself, right? So, you know, I came into this just thinking, you know, I need to do what's right. I found myself in a situation where, I mean, the initial reason to join the party was a desire to actually become active rather than an observer in terms of Gaza, and in terms of, I mean, the instigator was Gaza, but there's a lot else wrong with the country, which I have been trying to contribute towards somewhat by working behind the scenes with researchers and so on. But I came to the conclusion that I need to just before. So I didn't come into this election with any illusion that I've got a good chance, or even a reasonable chance, or even a distant chance of actually winning the election. But, you know, a point comes where you just have to do what you believe is right. Now, one of the key aims of mine was to increase awareness amongst the voters in Coventry South with regards to the existence of the Workers' Party as an option, right? Now there are 6 wards in Coventry South. There are only 2 wards which actually vote Labour. One of them, St Michael's, I covered fairly intensively. Remember, limited time frame and limited resources as well, because I haven't sought any donations at all. It was sort of like at the outside, I said, you know, I really don't like this system of donations because it can be compromising. So I thought, forget that. And then I haven't made any pledges as well to anyone, right? Not even PSC. Because again, you know, you make pledges and you open yourself up. So although it was quite easy for me to do that because I know I'm not going to win, right? The idea was, you know, let me at least in of myself conduct myself according to how I believe ideally, you know, one should proceed in politics. So it was kind of like a learning process for me, and an ability to just sort of like implement certain ways of thinking that I have. And yeah, I mean, I think I was very successful in raising awareness in St Michael's. And I mean, I did a bit in other areas as well, but it was very sporadic. It was very sort of like, you know, but for St Michael's and for the other one, Stoke Aldermore, on my esteemed colleague's Paul's suggestion, you know, we went down there one day. We did a bit of leafleting there, but beyond that, there was very little time. I don't have a team, so, you know, with sometimes my wife, sometimes with a very, you know, very esteemed friend who lives quite close to me, just went down and we did as much as possible. So the idea was, for me, it's a success. Actually, it's a roaring success for me, right? And I'll tell you why. So I would never have actually done this under any circumstances, apart from the circumstances we found ourselves in now with Gaza and Palestine generally. And, you know, for me, it was, you know, there's a kind of like everyone's got their personality style, I suppose you could say, or personality types. And I have a natural aversion to this kind of, you know, to politics, basically, or being involved in politics, right? And for me, the real test was: do you have the ability to stand up and go against what you would personally like? It was a test for me, personal, and you know, for me, it's a success that I even managed to, you know, do this and go through the process and stick to it faithfully according to, you know, my way of thinking. That's my victory, and, you know, personally.
Yeah.
And for the people of Coventry South, they have one as well, because now that, you know, I got 777. I mean, Paul, you speak, you know, your analysis is so flattering, right? In terms of, yeah, it's true. I beat the Independents and I beat, you know, the Social Democratic Party, right? Which is an established party, right? Which, you know,
They had their seventh biggest with 122 or 120 odd candidates standings, and you beat your one by a good chunky margin.
Yeah, I mean, so that's kind of like, you know, yeah, but I wasn't really, I mean, to be fair, I was, when I was in the hall, I never thought about the number of votes I was going to get. Although the effort, because it's part of what you do, is you try and maximize the votes when you're campaigning, right? And you adjust and you define and adjust your strategy accordingly. But when I was in the hall, I was like, look, I just don't want to be embarrassed, right? You know, as long as I've got such low vote, you know, if you've got like 10 or 12 and half of them are family members or whatever, you know, it's not a very good feeling. But yeah, I mean, when I saw the piles and sort of like, you know, because what they do is they separate them into piles according to, you know, the crosses. And I was like, you know, there's some people who have actually voted for me. For the Workers' Party, right? And through my efforts, right? And that was good. So 777, 7,777, it doesn't actually make any difference, right? To me, in that perspective. But I think, yeah, I've achieved a lot in terms of myself, my own personal sort of like journey in this, and trying to overcome psychological obstacles, I could say, or, you know, personal trait obstacles. And then secondly, awareness. Everybody knows about the Workers' Party now in Coventry South, so we're ready to move on now with that.
Yeah, if I can just pick up on that, I mean, a lot of what you've said, I think, echoes what a lot of us feel. We've stepped outside of our comfort zone. We're all up against slightly different challenges. Can you hear me clearly now, by the way, now than it was before?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, we could all say something slightly different. I mean, for me, myself, I think I'm a fairly private person normally. I know none of you would believe that, because you only know me sort of as from, you've known me recently since we've met. But stepping into the public eye and really going out and engaging people, that's something that I wouldn't normally do. I'm sure I can talk when I'm having a private conversation, but with members like the look of me, you know, we've all had to do that, and I think that we've learned a lot. And by the way, I want to say hi to Linda in the chat, because we have one of our recent candidates, Linda, there, and she's asked a great question, so I won't try and answer that. But I think that there is something in Linda's question about organization going forward, and I thought that I was going to kind of just go flat and sort of like want to rest and not do anything for a while, and then process things and think about what's going to happen next. But actually, there's my brain hasn't stopped working. I'm still actually thinking now about, okay, let's make sense of all of this and let's move forward. And I think that you know, I personally, I've still got a lot of fire in my belly, and I haven't slowed down at all. But I'm trying to convince my wife that I'm sort of yeah, I'm just going to take it easy for a while, but actually I'm not. That this is the beginning of something. So hopefully we can kick on from here. Now people know we're here, right? They didn't really know we were here before. Now we've engaged the public. We found out that this is something that we're good at doing. This is something that no one else is doing. we got the plan. We've got the skills. So I think we've got to kick on from here, and I think we will.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you for that. But I have put the question in from Linda. Paul, if you want to deal with that question before we move on to Brother Mustafa. So, good morning. I am very proud of the Workers' Party for Britain. What are your future plans to set up parties throughout the UK?
Well, thank you for your question, Linda. And I think we did barnstorm it. It took UKIP 13 years to get to 2.8% of the vote, and I did it in 5 weeks with a budget of £300, to be honest. And what we did together is we cleared the field. We got rid of, we established the Workers' Party as 6th place in Coventry, and I believe Nuneaton as well, and cleared out the independents and the smaller parties beneath us to establish us in that place. Now we've got 5 years, and that's a long time until the next election potentially. Could be earlier, I hope. But we've got time in there to start building what we call, I guess, Workers' Party branches around the country, so we can increase our candidates next time the general election comes up to 600 and something, like the other main parties. Get good candidates vetted and into seats around the country, and see if we can work with some of these other parties like the SDP, perhaps like Tusk, like who knows. But SDP, for instance, could be quite interesting because I think they're doomed politically to have a lot of representation in these rural areas, and collaboration with that sort of party might be of interest. Just to really expand our base. And I think we will get noticed a lot more if we get into the polls, onto the mainstream news a bit more. People will get to know our brand and expand on the work we've done in Coventry and Warwickshire. So hopefully get Warwickshire full of seats, full of candidates for people to vote for next time round. Like I say, yes, it took. I think what we've done is an amazing achievement for a small party in our first go.
I mean, Paul, 5 years, that's a long time. I think there's going to be by-elections, there's going to be local elections. There's a lot of campaigning that we can do way before 5 years' time. And I think that we should start to think about that now, because we've achieved so much in a short time. We need to, I think we need to keep a momentum going, but I also think we need to be better prepared and learn lessons as well.
Yeah, I mean, reform. We're up against a massive machine here, both in Reform and the Labour Party. Well, one interesting fact about the election is actually somehow we kind of helped Idris, my Muslim friend in the Reform Party, who is one of their better candidates, I would say, get into second place and beat the Conservatives by 400 votes. So that's something else I kind of helped out in changing politics for good in a certain way.
I think, but Paul, are doing all of their canvassing in old people's homes and Weatherspoons. Okay, I'm not exaggerating. That's the ears that are listening to them are, you know, people that can easily have their ears bent. And I think that we've got to get out and canvass youth, young people, and you know, we've students and sixth form students. I think we've got to work on people who are the future and not just wasting their life with their sort of lager and.
Yeah, I agree. We've got to get out and connect, and we are the ones doing that. I noticed at the count, only Idris turned up. The two other candidates they had didn't turn up, and I don't even know if they did much campaigning at all. A lot of them, I believe, are just paper candidates. Reform put anyone up, and they'll get a good chunk of the vote. So I didn't see much campaigning out actually on the streets from them. But they've got this massive machine. It costs £680 to do a mail out and a Royal Mail like post out that you get as a candidate. And they'll have had election. But in Labour's case, they would have had. They did canvass very effectively with 3 teams out a day or something like that, and they were at the polling stations in other areas. So they have got an enormous team in Labour. Not so much in Reform, but Idris is one of the better candidates who does have a lot of local connections and has got a bit of a team behind him.
Fantastic. I just want to ask Brother Mustafa, who I've actually seen on a major news outlet where he's actually talking to certain people when he's going there to protest against the crimes that are being committed in Palestine. and also some of his ideas. I really want to pick his brains. Brother Mustafa, are you still with us?
Yes, I'm here, brother. Yes.
Yeah, there's a couple of things I really want you to touch on. I remember you actually speaking to Jeremy Corbyn. I think that I'm sure that was maybe about 8 months ago or 6 months ago. Do you want to share that experience and how did that come to pass?
Yeah, so basically, Jeremy Corbyn, who, as everybody is aware, was the displaced leader of the Labour Party, who took a crushing defeat. But I think when Boris Johnson defeated him a number of years ago in the election, the anti-Semitic card was played by certain factions within the Labour Party to try to imply that Labour was infested with anti-Semitism, when that's simply not the case. Because in fact, Labour do hold a very strong link to a pro-Israel lobby as well. Even the constituent where I live as well, she's well associated with the Friends for Israel, or within the Labour Party as well. So the point is that, to me, for example, today in central London, there's another protest going to be taking place against the massacre occurring in Palestine, and Keir Starmer, who, as we all know, recently made those inflammatory comments against Bangladeshi community members here in London, and despite that, it didn't seem to affect his vote. So, in terms of, I mean, as we know, this is essentially a Muslim show in which we try to get people to think out of the box, and for Muslims also to participate in issues which are pertaining to the public domain. And I know many Muslims, for example, who didn't even vote, couldn't even be bothered to get up and even cast a vote. So there's a lot of untapped potential for political parties who can really pick up the vote. Now, Muslim population of London, for example, is expanding exponentially. I think of the 9 million inhabitants of London, 1.5 million are Muslim. 33% of businesses are owned by Muslims in London. So there's an untapped potential here of voters and certain opportunities for political parties really to gain the Muslim vote. And because the Muslim population is essentially expanding, I think there is definitely an opportunity to really canvass here in London for potential recruits for this particular for future elections or by-elections. But in terms of some of the points I'd like perhaps to address that John made. Now, John, I don't want to upset anyone or make any inflammatory comments, but as Muslims, in effect, we're totally against racism in every way, shape, or form, which I think certainly everyone on this panel would all concur with. But because we have certain moral structures in place, so I mean, in Islam there is a reticence to accept people who may have what they deem as their moral rights infringed upon. So, for example, homosexuality is deemed as not acceptable in the Islamic narrative. Not that we then castigate and reject these people as being subhumans, which unfortunately lots of people do. However, I do believe there is this game in place that, and the media is culpable in this, that if it's endemically unacceptable to be racist, at the same time, it's not acceptable to have certain reservations about certain, private acts that people do. So, although people in the Islamic narrative are able to do what they please within the confounds of their own personal abode or their own personal lives, but Islam does purport to a certain moral structure that we must live under, and that is very fundamental, you see. So, in fact, this is going to sound somewhat paradoxical and I hope not controversial, but a lot of the Islamic narrative is in fact in conjunction with a lot of what the reform voters will be thinking. Yeah. So although that sounds somewhat paradoxical, the issue with people who vote for reform is they think that they're superior due to the color of their skin. And because Islam has no such boundaries in regards to the color aspect, but we do share much in commonality of conservative values and share that with what I would deem as people who think along the conservative far right type of understanding. But where I feel that the people who do vote for reform or do have far right tendencies, their real
issue is, people of color, are inferior, and that is in fact endemically within them, you see. So, but although, as I said, they hold on to common values like authority of the father within the family, and I'd like to know what, if you gentlemen do, really propel in the constituencies that you are in. I mean, what do you intend to do to propagate issues in relation to fathers' rights in in matrimonial affairs, where they're crying out for help in terms of them seeing their children, or when the whole system seems to be lagged against them. I mean, I know there are many disillusioned Muslim male voters as well who simply don't want to participate in politics due to the corrupt nature of what they're envisaging. So, I mean, it would be great to get an idea of, for example, the Workers' Party that Paul represents, as to what are your policies in regards to such issues, which is very important for lots of Muslim males who feel totally disillusioned. I mean, what are your views, Paul? I'd like to ask in terms of propelling the rights of fathers and how the system is totally against them.
Well, the Workers' Party is the socially conservative party, but we're on the left. We're not on the far right or the right at all, really. So we come at it with a family sort of based approach. Now, working families are really at the heart of our policies, including working fathers. And the problems they face that I'm acutely aware of with access to children and that sort of thing. And also ones as other social socially conservative values that we uphold along with the Muslim community. We, a man's a man and a woman's a woman, and stand up for sort of normal relationships being taught in school at an appropriate age level, which I think some literature and some of the guidelines haven't quite met up to the standards that most people agree on and should be debated and consulted about a bit better, especially teaching very preschool, pre-5-year-old sort of kids, whatever, all this sort of LGBTQ education when it's a bit too early, if you know what I mean. Some of the guidelines in place we would argue against and try and change that sort of thing. And stand up for fathers. If I had been an MP, we could support cases a bit better. Unfortunately, I'm not, but it would have been something I'd love to stand up for my constituents a bit better and see how we could investigate and change the laws on that.
I mean, just to add to that point that Paul's just made, and by the way, I was a Workers' Party candidate as well in the election. In fact, all three of us are here, Dr. Mohmmed Ali as well. But just to echo the point about the idea that the party is socially conservative, I think that people get confused because when they say far right, they think that means racist and perhaps socially conservative in that way, authoritarian, if you like. But that is really a separate issue to the issue of economically left and right. So you can be economically left or right, but you can be socially conservative or you can be libertarian. And I think that they're actually, in some ways, the most distinct difference between the parties in this election, or the main parties, is between Green and Reform, because they are diametrically opposed in all ways. So if you think of Green as being quite left wing, but also quite libertarian, with a very, very strong, obviously, emphasis on the environment, then you've got Reform being not only right-wing economically, but also authoritarian in its views as well. And I think that this is where it gets confusing for, I think, a lot of people, is that, they're confusing the issues. Within the Workers' Party, I think that we're focused on the idea that it's the economics that needs to change. It's the shift towards the economic left that needs to happen, and then of course there's the anti-war platform as well. But with it, I think there's a broad range of views in terms of these questions around how much emphasis we should put on gay rights, or gender reassignment, or you mentioned fathers' rights. There's so many other different issues you could pick on. But I don't think that we should get too sidetracked by those issues. because the core value that we share is the value that we have humanity, and we see what's wrong with the system the way it is. And so Muslim and Christian and Jewish brothers together and sisters together should be focused mainly on that. But of course, we have to have debates about those other things as well. But I just don't think we should fall out about them right now, because we need a united left, and that includes the Greens as well in some respects.
Can I just make one point about the election, that Jeremy Corbyn did get elected. That is one result that the left got, and we had four, I think it was five other
pro-Palestine
pro-Palestine MPs elected along with him. So that vote the message is getting heard in some constituencies where they are running extremely well financed campaigns, I would suggest, and well known ones in Jeremy Corbyn's case. And that is something inspiring, I think, for the Muslim community, that we have got representation. There are 5 voices to match reforms for whatever they got.
Only thing I would say in regards to them, when I did interview Jeremy Corbyn a number of months ago, it was a brief interview when he was attending a pro-Palestine rally in his constituency near Finsbury Park in North London. I mean, I did observe, and I basically was informing the audience that I firmly believe that when he had his face-off with Boris Johnson, had not this label of being anti-Semitic been propelled towards him, that I believe that he would have run Boris Johnson very close in the previous election, or when they were contesting between each other. But they stained him with this notion that he's anti-Semitic, and before you know it, he suffered a crushing loss at the election. But he was very reluctant. I mean, I did make mention very clearly. It appears that the Zionists, really pushed you aside, and he knows that as well, but he was very reluctant to make a comment upon that. When he raised his hand to say he doesn't want to delve with that, but spoke about those other issues, such as fighting against racism or other such entities, which is a common theme. Which I'd love to speak about this in depth, perhaps in another show. But I've got some really interesting views.
I can imagine if you met him. I got to shake Jeremy's hand in the 2017 election, where he almost beat Theresa May. When he stood on a pro-Brexit policy, he did very well. And I met him at a Hastings rally. And I think if any hope can come from this election is, I think what George Galloway suggested, that Jeremy Corbyn puts together leads the Left Alliance. The maybe Workers' Party can join, and hopefully something to look forward to.
Since you said that, Paul, Brother Mehdi put a question has the Working Party of Britain tried approaching Corbyn? Why is he not a member and a candidate of the Workers' Party of Britain? Just as you mentioned that, there's a question come in. Dr. Mohmmed, I know you've been silently waiting and patiently waiting, and I appreciate that. Initially, Brother Mustafa asked regarding his question regarding the man's role within the family, and how will the Workers' Party of Britain approach that kind of aspect of family life. If you want to share something, you can, your own experience. If you got any, feel freely to talk, Brother Dr. Mohmmed.
I think generally, look, the thing is, it depends on why you're here. It depends on why you have entered politics. If it's principle driven, then you have to try your best as humanly possible to stay true to those principles, right? There's always the risk of compromising those principles. It's inherent in the political system to win more votes, right? I'm not interested in doing that, actually, right? So the thing is, one of the key reasons why I joined the Workers' Party is because very strongly, if you look at the key 10 points which we have to stick to, right? That they align with the way I think. Now, the thing is, it might shock you, actually, it might shock the listeners. I'm actually very apolitical. I've never been passionately political, right? I'm more of a pragmatic problem solver. So when I'm working with researchers and we're looking at policy issues, I don't come from an ideology from the left or from the right, right? I just look at that. Well, what's the problem here? and what's the best possible realistic doable solution. You never get a perfect solution, but sometimes you do manage to find things which cut away a lot of the obstacles and move you quite dramatically. It's quite possible to move dramatically in the right direction towards solving particular challenges and problems, either on the domestic front, the local front, the regional front, the national front, or even in terms of the global dimension, right? So my understanding is the problems, especially which Britain and internationally, which are faced at the moment, right, which we've got huge glaring inequalities, injustice, completely skewed systems which don't serve the people, which serve the elite, which have been designed that way and which are maintained that way, right? What's the solution to that problem? From an apolitical point of view, I kind of look at the Workers' Party and I say, you know what? The stance and the direction is the correct one to address these problems. So I'm not really ideologically driven in that sense, but what the Workers' Party is offering and what the values are and what the principles are and what the direction is in my apolitical analysis, going a really, really far way towards addressing what's really needed, right? What the challenges are and what the remedies are. So that's my overall general stance. Now, with the father's issue, look, there's balance is key. You have to find a middle way, right, for all of these things, okay? So a middle pathway, right, guarantees that anything. So, I mean, a lot of this has come about because women were at a disadvantage and legislation and policy has been put in place to address that. But a lot of people feel that it's overshot that middle balance that we need to have, and it's gone in the other direction. So you find fathers, especially when there's a marriage breakdown, at a lot of disadvantage. And I mean, the thing is, it's quite the norm in the UK for when there's a marriage breakdown for the mother to then look after the children, and sometimes fathers don't even get access. Sometimes that's justifiable, if they're violent and so on. If there's a risk to the children, then we need to have those measures in place. But sometimes, again, that system is abused. Obviously, when you've got a marriage breakdown, there's usually animosity, right? It's very rare, I think, from what I've observed, that they become friends for the sake of children. There is a natural tendency to feel bitter towards your ex-partner, and then sometimes the children are used as tools. So the whole thing really is, when you're going for justice and you've got an oppressed segment of society, or however you want to define the oppressed, right, in that particular form of oppression, it's critical not to address it in a way that it then shoots over to the other side and you're missing the balance, right? And I think generally from my observation, and I mean, we've got groups coming up like Fathers for Justice. These are men, I mean, it's a myth that men don't love their children, right? So it's almost as though, well, it's the mother who loves the children, men don't really care. And, I mean, there is this kind of like, this perception, I think, generally, which is portrayed in certain segments where men don't really care about their children as much as the mothers. But, they do, I think. And it's very important in all aspects to find that middle path where there's justice for everybody involved, even if there's been an injustice before, even if the system was skewed before. Let's design it in a way that it doesn't overshoot and then disadvantages over to the other end of the spectrum. So we need to stick to the middle balanced path.
Okay, Brother Mustafa, anything that you want to add?
Yeah, very, very briefly. I mean, it's very pertinent points that Dr. Mohmmed has made. However, I do feel like in such an instant where particularly men are now, they're predisposed as being often victims in domestic affairs, which is often not the case. But the system is so much against them. I mean, we just mentioned families need fathers or fathers for justice, and the certain acts that they have to perform, like dressing up as superheroes and going on top of tall buildings to put their plight to the public, and then they're often castigated by the media, but because they go to such an extent, because they feel the system is so much against them, the media in itself seems to be castigating those people who are doing these acts. But because, as I mentioned, it appears that fathers who are deemed as being less in terms of love that they can appropriate to their children, I think that's a nonsensical view. And the fact that we've got 40% more reportings of domestic violence against men over the last 10 years is in itself really tantamount to this massive disparity between the policies at hand of the system, which seems to. And why am I speaking so much about this is because as this is more to do with the political show today, there is much untapped potentiality for political parties, particularly Workers' Party, which I've now become somewhat familiar with, to get into these untapped voters. I think we're talking in the millions, and that's not an exaggeration. So we need to have a clear understanding as to what, in terms of the political entity, as to how we can propel such organizations who are feeling totally and utterly disillusioned by the system in place, you see, which gives the opportunity, as the doctor made mention, where females are able to misuse the system because it's absolutely favoring them, and they know full well that they can use children in matters of family breakdown, and often they will be given the preferential treatment by the courts and by the system. So this is something which is very, very important. I'm just making everybody aware that if you do want to get potentially untapped votes, that if you do deal with this, it could really benefit organizations such as the Workers' Party.
Fantastic. I'm not muted, am I, guys? I'm just multitasking. And whoever said men can't multitask, I am actually multitasking. So, guys, I really want to touch on the aspect of Gaza. I know this is a huge, 8 months now, nearly touching 9 months now since the war started and the genocide began. Roughly nearly 9 months now. And there's no signs of any ceasefire. The murder, the genocide just continues. Every day there is news regarding people, family members, sometimes up to 9 to 14 or plus family members dying in an attack by the IDF. And of course, we've been watching the news in Rafah, which were supposed to buildings. I don't think there's any universities still standing in Palestine or in Gaza right now. Hospitals, I think 99 to 90% not working. The hunger, people are dying of starvation. And like I said, guys, I don't want to get emotional, but we need to really address this. And do you feel that the Labour Party will make a U-turn in their stance? I know it's a very big question, and I would love to get everybody's opinion on that. Now, the fact that he's in power now, do you think the Labour Party will make a slight change to what the Conservatives did? Paul, I want to ask you the question. Do you think the Labour Party will be the same, or do you think there'll be a change?
Well, they made a U-turn a couple of months ago and declared they wanted a ceasefire, but that was months too late. That was 6 months too late or something. They supported it all the way through that. We had Keir Starmer calling for them to cut off electricity and water. That's not going to change. They're not going to change any further policy. That's as far as they're going to go. They're going to call for a ceasefire, which I think all the main parties are now. But they're not going to go further like the Workers' Party would. They're not going to stop arms sales, which Zara Sultana is calling for, but she won't get. Keir Starmer won't stop arms companies like Elbit being sold to by British companies. They won't put a total embargo on all Israeli products until this stops. They won't demand the return of the refugees. They won't demand a one-state solution. They won't demand release of the Palestinian prisoners. which a Things Workers Party would do in advance of all other parties. We would be we had got into power, and we will still be calling for these things until we do get into power, hopefully, and can put this sort of force on pressure on Israel to stop.
Yeah, I am really shocked that so many Muslims fell for the Labour Party. I really do think they've sold themselves, no doubt about it. And I'm not scared to say it because here in Coventry, of course, the majority who voted were voted for the Labour Party, and this is one of the reasons when we were standing outside the Folesville Community Centre, there's nobody there to represent the Labour Party or any of the parties, because I do feel, and this is a strong statement I'm going to make. I think whoever voted for the Conservative Party and the Labour Party or any other party that is pro-Zionist has got their hands soaked in the blood of the Palestinian people, and this is a blanket statement. We really need to check ourselves, and when we have to stand in front of God, we have to be ready for a good answer. We have to have a good script, otherwise you're going to have some serious issues. I'm going to put the same question to John. Sorry, Paul, did you want to add something?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that there is more we can do and more I intend to do. There is a Palestinian Solidarity Campaign march in Coventry, not just London, today. Our colleague John, who was out campaigning with us, he's actually on that march, I think, as we speak. And I'll be hopefully just recovering from the election this weekend, tidying things up a bit. But I will be on these marches in future, so hopefully we can catch some of your viewers there, perhaps.
Yeah, did he say he's in Coventry today, or did he say?
Yeah, there's a Palestinian Solidarity March in Coventry today, which that John, who introduced me to you, he's attending that right now. That's why he probably couldn't make this podcast.
Oh, it's a shame. If he would be live, it'd be fantastic to get him on.
Maybe we could do another one down at one of these someday.
Yeah, absolutely. Fantastic. Thank you for that, Paul. I'm going to give the mic on to John. Of course, the initial question was, and hopefully you do remember, regarding do you think the Labour Party will either stay the same or change their views regarding the genocide in Palestine?
Yeah, so I definitely work towards that question, but picking up on what you said about how you think that anyone who voted Labour or Conservative has blood on their hands. I mean, of course, that's how I feel about it. I feel that same thing, but we all know people who voted Labour and maybe Conservative as well. I don't know anyone actually who voted Conservative. That's the truth. But I do know people who voted Labour. And do I think they have blood on their hands? Because maybe they're still my friend. All out with everyone who voted Labour, right? So in my heart, I agree with you. They have blood on their hands, and I don't want that. But in my head, I know that people have done that because of apathy and ignorance and just lack of understanding, and that's what we're up against, really. Not a bunch of people who have no morality. People who voted Labour still have morality. They're just misled about the significance of that vote. But to the question, do I think that do I think the Labour Party would change their stance on Gaza? That was the question, right? Yeah. So I mean, as Paul said, their positions shifting, but with the American government's position shifted as well. But I feel that all they're doing is they're compromising. They're trying to strike a balance between what they really want to do, which is to allow the Zionists to essentially achieve their aims because they have a deal with the Zionists, and appease the morality of their own people, if you like, because people don't like it. People watch it and they don't like it. So for example, at the beginning, anyone who said there should be an immediate ceasefire was shot down and told, you shouldn't be saying that because Israel's got the right to defend itself, right? But as we've moved on, we've seen this position weaken. Like the Greens, for example, now think that we should return stolen land to the Palestinians, and weapon sales to Israel, respect the ICJ decisions, The Labour Party, well, when I'm looking at a document now, when this document was produced, they certainly didn't respect the ICJ decisions. And we're the only ones still now who are saying that we need to cut all relations with Israel until something changes, to return stolen lands to Palestinians, all the rest of it, release all Palestinian prisoners as well, because that's what they are. Well, they're hostages is what they are, right? So will the Labour Party shift on that? I think that, if I'm honest with you, and this is not going to cheer anyone up, I think the situation as it is in Gaza is going to spread to other areas of, other parts of the region. And I think it already is escalating into something else. And I hope I'm wrong, but George Galloway has said this, and I tend to think it anyway. I think most of us agree with it, that Keir Starmer is leading us into an escalation of events in the Middle East and an escalation of events in Eastern Europe as well. And I want to be wrong about that. I want George Galloway to be wrong about that. But if I'm honest with you, and this is with my head, not my heart, I do think there is an escalation of conflict going on at the moment. And I think Keir Starmer has essentially signed up to it from the very beginning. And I think he's been paid off as well. I'm not right now, it's still going on. And you must be, if you're in Gaza right now, the most confusing thing to you must be, why isn't anyone helping us? Why isn't anyone helping us? The Americans, the British, just anyone. It's just crazy. It doesn't make any sense at all how you can marry up that sick morality of voting for this genocide. I think people are confused, and I think they need educating, and I think they need waking up to the truth as well. I'm getting worked up again now, but I'm going to calm myself down for a while.
Can I maybe just drag back to a point of that Mustafa said about Michael Gove being one of the most important political figures of the 21st century? I would say it's actually, in my opinion, Alistair Campbell of the Labour Party, who was Tony Blair's advisor throughout the Iraq War and very much lied about and caused the Iraq War with the preceding genocide before Gaza, with a million Iraqis dead, and then going forward into Libya. The Blairite doctrines that Campbell put in didn't really change when the Conservatives came into power, and more foreign wars continued. So we will not see an end to, I think, foreign wars increasing, like John said, until people like Alistair Campbell and Keir Starmer now are just defeated. The Labour Party will be brought down on this because they will be as bloodthirsty as Alistair Campbell was in the future, I suggest.
Well said, Brother Paul. I'm going to give the mic on to Dr. Mohmmed and then Brother Mustafa. Dr. Mohmmed, my initial question was, do you think the Labour Party will change their views regarding the situation in Gaza, or is it too late? Because the leader of the Labour Party initially, backed the idea of no electricity, no food, nothing going into the country of Palestine. Do you think he'll make a U-turn or be the same?
So, I mean, one way of thinking about this is in relation to comparison between stance and, verbal pronouncements on Ukraine versus Gaza, right? The thing is, in the social sciences, there's something called observable implications. So you can very rarely see all the processes in place when you have a particular cause produce a particular effect, right? And we try to look at the mechanisms and the step by step and how one thing A leads to B, leads to C, leads to ultimately Z. But I think what you have to look at, the one way of thinking about it from a more research scientific point of view is, what are the outcomes, right? So let's not think so much about rhetoric and pronouncements, but let's just look at the outcomes, right? So the cause is the potential influence of groups like the Labour Friends of Israel on the Labour Party, right? And various of their MPs, a number of them, but quite a large, substantial proportion.
37%. in the last
Yeah,
parliament.
I mean that's right. And now George has spoken about this a lot. What's the connection? I mean, the thing is, personally, I don't think Britain should have any group called Friends of anything, right? Because we need to focus on the UK's interest, right? Where, you know, it's a competitive world. We need to focus on why should you automatically be a friend of one country or another country, or what, you know, just, to me, it just doesn't make sense, right? But anyway, it is what it is, and so that's a potential. You could hypothesize that that's an input, that's a cause, right? And then you look at the outcome, right, which is things are just the same, right, in Gaza, and it's ongoing. You know, as time goes by, when you've got the input from the IDF and the Israeli government into Gaza, right, and as time goes on, obviously it gets worse and worse and worse. So, you know, I'm really hesitant to look at pronouncements. And when we talk about shifts, right, what we really are talking about is shifts in what they say, not shifts in the outcomes, right? So I think that's really key distinction. And I'm much more interested in the outcomes and the actions, right? So if there was a vote for a ceasefire, yeah, but we all know what happened, and we all know the fiasco which happened with that, right? Which was tabled by the SNP, and then Starmer came in and did certain things, and it didn't go ahead. And so let's just focus on the outcomes. Let's not focus on verbal pronouncements, and let's not conflate and confuse a shift in what people are saying. Let's not think that that's a shift in policy. A shift in policy, when it means anything in reality, means a shift in the outcomes, the realities on the ground in Gaza. I don't think that's going to happen. Not from the Labour Party, not from the Conservatives, not from the UK now that a Starmer Labour government is in power. I think it's going to go to the end unless, you know, the people can find a way to exert enough pressure on the government to materially change its stance and do something about it, like limiting or completely restricting arms sales to Israel. I mean, the thing is, if you look at the arguments, they're pretty nonsensical. So when Cameron was, you know, the arguments they put forward are pathetic, right? Because the outcome desired is one and the same, in my opinion, right? So when you look at what Cameron was saying, is like, we're very different. You know, there was this blip in the machine where what happened was there was this news which came out that America might be halting a particular shipment of arms to Israel. The US might be doing that. And then Cameron said, well, we're not going to, because we've got a different system here. We don't, as a government, actually supply the arms. We have got an export licensing system, so it's materially different. And, you know, I'm familiar with export because I deal with international research, right? And I'm familiar with the export licensing system. They just have to flick a switch and say all of these are withdrawn. You know, it's actually probably easier to withdraw the licenses and to stop issuing new licenses than, you know, if you've got a whole supply chain which is, you know, in production and so on and so forth. So yeah, I mean, no, I have absolutely no confidence whatsoever that this government is going to make any changes, going to implement anything of any material benefit for the people of Gaza, none whatsoever. You might hear them talking about it, but please don't confuse that with a shift in policy. A material shift in policy is when you actually see differences in outcome.
Yeah.
Well said. Sorry, John. Mustafa, I know he's very passionate on this topic. Do you want to say a few words before Mustafa comes in?
Just to echo that point, I mean, again, it's that they have to kind of keep people sort of on board. So by showing that, or making this little bit of a show of humanity, you know, this is okay. What's in Gaza because the Hamas have caused it and all of that. but you know, we just want to kind of say, just go a little bit easy, you know, just maybe you know, we're not fully signed up to all of the death and destruction that's going on. We just support these. I mean, it's like they just fudge it all the time. And I think they'll fudge it as much as they need to. So if public opinion shifts in the direction of, oh, now we're really unhappy about what's happening in Gaza, which you would have thought that public opinion would be at that point already, then they have to appease people a little bit to demonstrate their humanity. But they don't have humanity. It's just a show. It's just a mask. And we know it's dropped already. So I agree with everything Dr. Muhammad Ali said about this subject. I don't honestly believe that that it's going to get any better. In actual fact, I suspect in some ways it may get worse.
Okay, thank you for adding that. Brother Mustafa, I know you're very passionate on this topic. Feel free to express your thoughts on my question regarding will the Labour Party change, or will it be the same regarding the situation in Gaza?
Yeah, thank you, Brother Muhammad. Yes, I mean, in a nutshell, the answer is no, nothing is going to change. I would concur with the points that John, Paul, and Dr. Muhammad have made. It's going to get worse, in fact. Now, just a quick bit of information in regards to Keir Starmer, the people we're hoping who will supposedly make a change. We need to realize that this was a supposed gentleman in 2009 who was the head of the CPS when Jimmy Savile, the late infamous Jimmy Savile, in regards to him being arrested for his despicable crimes. And he was actually arrested and cautioned by Surrey police as a result of 2 rape allegations which were made against him, and the subsequent 500 people who came forth posthumously in terms of what he did. Now, it became apparent that when action was going to be taken further, that this was all covered up against Jimmy Savile, because he would have then shown where his contacts lay in terms of his covering up. And we know who all signed away no further action against him, the very own Keir Starmer. So what we are expecting from such individuals who are now the Prime Minister of this country, it beggars belief. That is something everybody is unaware of. I was actually on a TikTok show a couple of days ago speaking about this issue, and it was shocking how lots of people were still making comments. We're still going to vote Labour. So, I mean, in terms of giving perhaps a slightly different angle to this, now, in terms of the reasoning behind this, as Muslims, we believe this is pathological understandings. Now, for Christians, who John and Paul may be, we need to understand that the Islamic narrative is in conjunction with the Christian narrative about certain events to occur. And I believe firmly that we're in the preamble or in the initial stages of that. So it becomes incumbent upon the Zionists to implement their core structure within Gaza and within Palestine as well.
Can you explain a bit more on that, Brother Mustafa? I find this topic very interesting, and I really want the audience who is new to the channel to kind of grasp to what you're saying. Why do you say the things you're saying regarding certain groups and of people who are really pushing this forward?
Yeah, I mean, this is very fascinating, you see, because it was essentially, you've been asking everybody's opinions on this particular point. I've got so much to say, I don't want it to go on forever. My mind's even racing now as to being succinct and to the point of the delivery of the point. But as Muslims, we believe in the return of Christ as well. And we believe that there is a certain setting which will take place, and Israel and the Middle East will be at the center of that. So we also believe that we're living at times where an ungodly system is in place, and in the precipice of the return of Christ, that there has to be certain settings which have to be taking place in the Middle East, which will support the anti-God system, which we're seeing in here. You know, the advancement of things such as LGBTQ, feminism, atheism, the very entities which are fundamentally opposed to a creator. So that is the reason why the West in particular, who've been infiltrated by these entities, these Zionist entities, who are in fact vociferously anti-God. And they are going to perpetuate this within the Middle East, and hence their overwhelming support for the state of Israel. So this barbarity and brutality that we're witnessing, they are the ones who are the perpetuators of this. And in fact, this march, which is taking place in central London today, which has been taking place regularly over several months, it's going to have no volition whatsoever. It's going to have no bearing whatsoever. People go home shouting on the top of their lungs, hoping that in the screaming that they can understand what the Palestinians are going through. But it's going to have no bearing whatsoever. Keir Starmer, even if he had some intent, and I think he did make some initial comments right at the beginning of this conflict, but I remember he was summoned into having a meeting, a parliamentary meeting, in which immediately he changed his tone afterwards and came out making pro-Palestine, Israel statements. So even someone like him who's observing what's happening, I mean, there are powers behind him who are working. If anybody thinks it's Keir Starmer who's going to make all the decisions in regards to these policies, they're sadly mistaken. There are certain individuals in the background who are very much incorporated into the dark forces. Now, this may not appear to be what you call a very academic type of understanding, but it will take me a considerable amount of time to explain this. But in essence, we're seeing that they want an unholy system in place. So as Muslims, as I made mention, we believe in Christ's return. He will set up a particular system in place, which will be implementing God's law. And they simply don't want that. The powers that be, the Zionists that be, they want to introduce a system which is totally in contradiction to what God has pertained to. Hence, we must realize this is why the Christian Zionists, in particular in the US, they support Israel no matter what. This endemic understanding that the Jews must be in Zion in order to perpetuate the return of Christ is what these Christian evangelicals in particular hold on to very fundamentally. And they believe that they must support Israel no matter what. Although there is a detailed academic study which says this is an actual later insertion into Christian theology, but it wasn't the basis or based upon biblical exegesis. But so in effect, no, there is going to be no change whatsoever. It's going to get tantamountly worse. It's not just in relation to what's happening in the Middle East. I'm observing very carefully other parts of the world, what's happening in North Korea, the axis between Russia and North Korea as well, and how America is actually supporting the other countries in the Far East. So this is all setting up nicely, well, not nicely, but into these future eschatological events to occur. Ukraine will be just one part of that system in place. And it is frightening to think, but I can't see any help coming forward to the Palestinians. The redundancy of the Muslim nations who just in condemning acts of brutality, who pretend to stand up for Israel, make one or two comments just to appease their populace, and before you know it, they're still helping Israel in every way, shape, or form. Let's take a country like Turkey, which is today actually supporting Israel in many regards, although on the surface they're making comments which would be anti, against what Israel is doing, but they're supplying them with all types of even armory today. Can you believe that? With army equipment, uniform, so many things that they're still doing. The oil which goes from Kazakhstan into Turkey through to the Caucasus, this is all infiltrated by Turkey having a position of dominance and power, and they are actually helping Israel in many ways. So the Muslim, the Muslims in their various countries, countries like Pakistan, for example, we know the candidate Imran Khan wanted to do better for the country. Now, what have we got? We've got the corrupt leaders who have been reinstalled, who actually take their tutelage from the West. Nawaz Sharif, as an example, 4 years he's been living in central London in luxury accommodation, luxury properties he's stolen from his own people, and Britain actually supports it. You see, Britain actually supports these corrupt leaders so that the endemic people of that particular country, like Pakistan example, they can't progress. They can't make any, they can't get out of the grip of their poverty, which is post Second World War. This was some of the colonial methods of giving them their farewell kiss, that we will still be in control of you. And hence, this is why the Muslims are so redundant as well, despite the fact that they are vast in numbers, but they have no say whatsoever. And indeed, they are under the whip of the Zionist system. So that's why I cited Pakistan. That's a classic example of that. You see the inability to help. The Palestinians have been calling for a very long time from help from Pakistan, which is supposedly a nuclear-powered country, but no help will come forward. And this is just the tragedy of the matter. So without me going into a very lengthy explanation of every single point, I do suggest for Christians in particular to do investigate Islamic eschatology. We believe in Jesus Christ as well. He will return, and there will be a certain setting in place, and that setting now is fast coming into fruition. Hence the actual media dislike towards the religion of Islam, which is spreading ubiquitously within the UK in particular.
Mustafa, is that linked to the third temple and the whole kind of red heifer thing, and that you're wanting to remove, I think, the mosque on the hill in Jerusalem, isn't it? Is this whole issue of that you're talking about? I think in Arabic, Jesus' name is Isa. Is that right?
Yes.
Is this whole kind of I suppose religiously driven prophecy linked to the Jewish third temple?
Yeah, they're
In
all interlinked
Jerusalem?
without any shadow of a doubt, John. There's no
Yeah.
doubt about that
It's a
whatsoever.
fascinating subject. It clearly shows how high the stakes are. That we obviously moving into talking about religion, but what you're demonstrating quite very well actually is how for a lot of people, and perhaps especially people with more faith, whatever their religion is, are kind of not just seeing the stakes as being political, but also more existential than that, if you like. Maybe the future of mankind, if you like, that kind of existential.
Yeah, no, people who think it's just conspiratorial nonsense based upon certain religious affiliation. I mean, they need to really study this in depth. I mean, why would, for example, the entire world or the Western world go against Russia for their acts in Ukraine?
Yeah.
However, what 75 years of talk the Palestinians have gone through, they turn a total blind eye. So, in effect, I mean, I do to an extent, gentlemen, also blame Muslims as well, living in countries which are affluent in the West. They're not prepared to stick their neck out and do certain acts for, because they're living in relative comfort. So, I mean, what are we doing? I mean, we're seeing mainly non-Muslims who are actually participating in protests, trying to make the public's attention more aware than the very people who are supposedly seen as brothers to those who are suffering. So this is the sad paradox of what we're observing, and we're hoping for some form of renaissance within certain communities. And we're all human beings, as you've correctly stated, and we need to come together to dispel notions which are very fundamental against human decency. What we're seeing in Palestine, a Holocaust, a genocide, and these are not words which are used lightly. That's happening in front of our eyes, but now we're seeing the brutal reality of what we appear in Western countries, in the UK, in the US, as being the bastions of decency, of morality, of goodness, of tolerance. Well, I think that's been thrown out of the window as a result of what we're witnessing.
Yes, and good point. I thought I'm just on this subject of eschatology. I'm a Muslim myself, Mustafa. My Islamic name is Adam, but I'm a Christadelphian background, and I think I think everybody in all faith communities, almost, I'd say, in the Muslim community, but they're looking forward to the return of Isa. In the Christian community, they're looking forward to the return of Christ. The Jewish community, they're looking forward to the Davidic Messiah's return. And even in the Druze faith, they're looking for the return of Al Hakim. And I think we're seeing events playing out that are, I think everyone is thinking it's the end times, or if not, we're thinking World War III might start anytime soon. Even the people who haven't got any faith. So I think that we're seeing that play out. And just on a bit of a lighter note, it says in the book of Revelation that the number of the beast is 666, and Dr. Muhammad Ali, he got 777 votes and put us into sixth place. I don't know if that's any numerology, but bit of a lighter tone on an eschatological subject.
No, I didn't realize, Paul, that you're a Muslim. So assalamu alaikum to you. So yeah, I mean, in essence, you see, I'm absolutely engripped by this particular topic, and I can see all strands coming together. And perhaps we
Mhm.
can do a show in the future with Brother Muhammad's channel to really go in depth in this. And I think you will find some of the things that I perhaps will have studied to be most fascinating, and they're not based upon some conspiratorial understanding, but a deep study. I've studied the book of Revelation, in fact, in considerable depth as well, and I do find the analogy with certain Islamic hadiths, which are the
Yeah.
sayings of the Prophet Muhammad, upon whom be peace, to be quite interesting in regards to the return of Christ and what that particular setting would be. But just for people's information, Paul, who would have come from a Christadelphian background, so Christadelphians, they do not believe in the divinity of Jesus, and some subsects of them do not actually believe that even Jesus was crucified, which is very much along the Islamic narrative. And on
It is
TikTok, I've
non-Trinitarian.
actually met a Christadelphian gentleman who has actually made mention, having spoken to him, that he's studying Islam, he's studying the Quran. He's actually going to meet me at an Islamic information table later this month, and he's looking to take further steps about understanding. So Muslims and Christians have much in common. This is very crucial and to understand. And it's a way of harmonizing people, where people have got misinformation and certain hesitancy in regards to others. The Quran speaks very favorably of Christians, and it's very, very clear in Surah 5 verse 82. They're deemed to be the nearest to Muslims in love and belief, and so this is a very fundamental point to address. And I look forward to perhaps having a discussion on perhaps eschatological similarities and what we're all spiraling towards. Many people will think, "Oh, that's for the future, perhaps," but no, it's very much the setting, the preamble is now being done for these particular events to occur. Hence, you seeing the redundancy of any real help for Palestinians.
I always
What I
mention
would
that.
just add, sorry, just
Go on, Dr.
what
Mohammed.
I just say in relation to one point that Mustafa made about the leaders of Muslim countries and what's happening in Pakistan and so on. So I think it was in the 1950s or 60s that a theorist, a development economics theorist, Andre Gunder Frank, formulated what was labeled the dependency theory. And essentially, one of the key arguments he made was that colonialism never really ended with the departure of these foreign colonial powers. What happened actually was they left in place managers of the same color as the subjects in those countries. And essentially, the implication is that even up to today, these guys are not really leaders. In a number of Muslim countries, they're managers, and they're managers for colonial powers in the West. So I would recommend, if you're interested, just Google it up, just have a quick look on Wikipedia even. Dependency theory, and you get this good sort of outline as to that way of thinking about things. Thank you.
I just want to because I need to leave very shortly. It's been delightful speaking to everybody. I just want to mention, and this may again sound very controversial, but I do think people need to investigate the protocols of the Learned Elders of Zion. 24-point plan that they've got is absolutely fascinating. I mean, people will say immediately, "Oh, you're an anti-Semitic. Oh, this is an anti-Semitic diatribe based upon a Russian publication in the early part of the 20th century." But if you notice exactly what they're up to the T, they're implementing it now. There's some other unique things I can share with you, which will blow your mind away in terms of by these very Zionist gentlemen, in fact, to crush racism. This is a policy they've got at hand as well, and people of a mixed race are also right in the middle of it. Now, again, I'm going to be going off on a total lengthy exposition of this. Hence, it's probably advisable that we have a particular show on this, but I'd love to have both Paul, John, Dr. Mohammed on the show to discuss this in depth. And you can see it visibly within the demographics of the society that we're in. And I hope I'm making coherent sense that an attempt to crush racism is actually a part of the policy of these Zionists. But it's to do with future eschatological matters again, in relation to bringing Black people and immersing Black people within society and propelling them. I do suggest people watch a film called Trading Places with Eddie Murphy in 1983.
Great film.
They're actually implementing that to the T. Another film I found absolutely fascinating as a child, but only now do I really realize the absolute significance of this, is the Omen 1 film, 1976,
Yeah.
with Gregory Peck. And a lot of people listening on to me will have a little giggle thinking he's probably watching one too many films. However, it will require for me to give an in-depth understanding and perhaps that's why I raised the topic initially of families need fathers. Some of those subliminal messages right at the beginning of the Omen 1 film, where women are the ones who will be the beneficiaries, according to the Islamic narrative, they will be the major beneficiaries of the coming of this antichrist type of figure known as the Dajjal. So we're seeing, like I said, I mean, I'm hitting on future topics at certain points, which I'm rushing through essentially. But yes, I'd love to, perhaps, Brother Mohmmed, with your permission, to organize a discussion based singularly on these points.
Sounds good. You covered a lot of topics there. We could, probably a whole new podcast on it.
Absolutely. We will definitely plan something for the future. But there's a question directed to you, Brother Paul, Brother Mehdi. I have a question for Brother Paul. Who is his backup for the next election? God forbid if something happens to him between now and next election. Come on, brother. Just be positive. Inshallah, nothing. If it's not called earlier than in 4 to 5 years, inshallah, he'll be still here with us. So the question,
inshallah, I'm not going anywhere. Well, hopefully there'll be a queue of people soon, but I would say this John, who introduced me, has got an excellent background in local politics and local knowledge, and is solid on the Palestine front. So I would put him forward as a candidate in my place straight away, or possibly even move him to northwest. We need a candidate in Coventry Northwest first of all. In 5 years' time, hopefully we'll get that and more in Warwickshire. But we've had a lot of friends and supporters. In fact, I'll tell you who could be an interesting candidate as well, Mohammed Dad. That's a friend I met on the campaign trail of yours, called Abdul Rahman, or Abs. I came across him in a car. I don't know if you know this chap too well, but he knows you. And I've taken his number, and he's a local independent candidate in Foleshill in the council elections, just doing his own thing. But he got him in like within 40 votes of a council seat, he claimed. So again, there's someone else there to work with who might very well make good candidate material if, God forbid, anything happened to me.
One thing I'd like to very quickly say, very, very briefly, is that there could be someone who is Paul's namesake, a very famous YouTuber who's a convert to Islam based in London. His name is Paul Bilal Williams. He's got a YouTube channel called Blogging Theology. Now, I know he's got plenty of affiliation with top academics and politicians as well. So perhaps he could be someone who would be interested. I mean, I know a couple of people are affiliated to him. So perhaps we can touch a base on that in future shows. So that's something I thought I'd suggest.
Sounds good. I'll look at that.
Thank you, Brother Mustafa. Thank you for joining us. I know you've got to shoot off soon. I know John's got to shoot off also. But alhamdulillah, all praise be to God. What a extremely good show again. We touched on so many topics. We went deep into religion. We went deep into the Labour Party. We've hit a lot of topics today. And if you brothers and sisters rewatch this show again, you'll pick up so much information because what Brother Mustafa brings is very profound, very interesting. And initially, when he brought this topic to me many years ago, I was shocked with. And to be honest, some of the films that he mentioned, I had to re-watch it with his kind of sunglasses on or his glasses on to understand what he meant by Trading Places and Omen and much more. Even I think The Wives of Dracula, which was another movie where the Wives of Dracula. Yeah, of course he had quite a few wives, and he was drawn towards the women and how women fell for him. And it's very interesting that if you look at it through Mustafa's lenses, and I found that very interesting. But we can do another show on that, and it'll be fantastic to do so. But unfortunately, brothers and sisters, we do have to wrap the show up. It's getting to 12:30 here, midday. And finally, towards the end, I really want to ask you, brothers and sisters, consider about becoming a member to the show. I think it's about £2.99 a month, cost of a cup of tea or a cup of coffee. It really helps my channel grow. Since I started doing the streams regarding Gaza and Palestine with Brother Yusuf from South Africa, I realized that not many people were getting access to my channel. Maybe because we were touching on some real hard-hitting situations, and I was just going to say the name. Some social media platforms really limit, my views, unfortunately. So if you could really help me by becoming a member, liking, subscribing, and sharing to the channel, that'd be much appreciated. It really will do a lot for me. Also, super chats, super stickers helps me get around the area of Coventry to pick up environmental issues. Recently, I was asked to do a particular clip regarding fly tipping, and it was definitely click and collect. You could get beds, you can get chairs, sofas, everything was dumped there. So if you know where that place is, if you got a van, go and collect it. It's still available. But this is some things that I do. No worries. Highlight here in Coventry. But thank you for all your support, your comments. I've been asked to go to various parts of Coventry, Radford, Wood End is another area, Belgreen, Longford, and I will be doing that shortly. But if you could help me, get there by super chats, super stickers, and memberships, that would be much appreciated. I'm gonna go around the table here and final thoughts and final statements. That'd be fantastic. So, Brother Paul, feel free to speak freely, Brother Paul. You've got a couple of minutes. This is your chance. So, as Eminem used to say, don't blow it. So go ahead.
Well, I'd just like to say thank you for hosting the show, and also to people out there to keep an eye on the Workers' Party. Keep an eye on my Facebook and Twitter accounts. We've got a WhatsApp group if you'd like to join the Workers' Party supporting Coventry, and I'd like people to join up and be members so we can grow this party and take this movement further. We'll look forward to hopefully catching up again soon, and maybe sharing a lamb and sham down at Yasmin Sham, the restaurant where we met again soon.
Yeah, definitely. Inshallah, we'll hook up and we can do a live stream from the restaurant. And I'm hoping to invite everybody, Brother John, Dr. Mohmmed. It'll be nice to meet you all in person, and maybe we can meet up hopefully next weekend or so, or midweek, whatever is suitable. We can all have a chin wag and a chat. That'll be fantastic, and have some beautiful Syrian tea and some Syrian food. Very healthy, I would say. You're getting me hungry now. Dr. Mohmmed, final thoughts. Go ahead.
So the thing is, the election is done. It's over, right? But I think from everyone I've met in the Workers' Party, nobody did it in order to, because of the election, right? The election, strangely enough, is not the end point as it is, as we might imagine. It's actually the starting point. It's the beginning. We were kind of rudely thrown into it all of a sudden at the beginning. But the thing is, this is a long-term project, right? The people in Gaza are still undergoing the devastation, right? Every minute, I don't know how many have died since we started this podcast from the last couple of hours, right? It's going on. It's continuing, right? So the thing is, look, it's our duty as the Ummah to step up. We can't, we don't want to find ourselves in a situation where on the Day of Judgment, Allah's asking us, well, what did you do? And you say, well, I didn't know, I didn't do anything. No, actually, the thing is, what's happened is, as this tragedy has unfolded, options to actually do something have opened up as well, right? So I don't think I would like to be in the situation where on the Day of Judgment there was an opportunity in front of me to do anything. We don't have to think what is going to lead from this to that, and is it going to make a difference? Isn't it going? Allah's not going to say what difference did you make, right? Allah's just going to say he's just going to ask what action did you take, right? So the thing is, what I would suggest is join the Palestinian Solidarity campaign events, right? That's what difference does it make? They're going to keep on marching. It doesn't matter. At least we won't be questioned that, look, there was something you could have done and you didn't even do that, right? So that's the way I think about it. Paul mentioned the WhatsApp group, right, for Coventry. Join that, right? Keep in touch, right? Let's figure out how we can move this movement, right? You think of a political party which turns up at election time and then comes 5 years later at election time. This is not the way I'm viewing this. This is a movement in the form of a political party. So join the Workers' Party, right? Join the WhatsApp group. Let's all work together. Let's figure out how we can at least put our bit in, our effort in, to help the people of Palestine, of Gaza, right? So at least from a very selfish point of view, even, we can say on the day of judgment when we're questioned, look, this was in front of me. I did it. I did try, right? Let's not find ourselves in a situation where we say, well, there were things in front of me, but I didn't even try those. I mean, come on. So, inshallah, let's just make the niyat and let's just work towards, in whatever our capacities are, whatever our scope in terms of our or our abilities or whatever it is, let's just grab any opportunity to do something for our brothers and sisters and our children over there. Please, let's start taking action. Thank you.
Thank you. That's beautiful, Dr. Mohammed. I really appreciate that. Brother Mehdi donated 11 euros. So T is on Brother Mehdi. Thank you, Brother Mehdi. Really appreciate that. But there is another way of you can donate directly without anything being deducted from YouTube or any other social media, is by going to my charity account, which is on Monzo, the Coventry Faith Foundation. And if you go through some of my past video clips, I've been in Ethiopia, I've been in Sierra Leone and other parts of the world doing projects such as water wells, building mosques, being physically there with water wells and mosques and orphanages. And majority of all of these donations actually are still being sent to Ethiopia. This time last year, I was actually in Ethiopia with the community there in Addis Ababa. So any donations, will go towards those causes. It's not all about myself at all. Alhamdulillah, I'm in full employment, and I really don't need donations coming to me. But any donations, mashallah, will help other people around the world. If anybody got any other projects, we can do something on my channel to help people around the world. Water well project is very beneficial, as we know, as Muslims. Giving water to people is very much looked good on from Allah, from God Almighty, that we're giving people water to drink. So any donations and stuff, if you can donate directly to the Coventry Faith Foundation, the ticker below, as you can see, to the Monzo account, and then I could transparent. I can show you the donation, and I can donate, and I can show you where the donations are going. Previously, like I said, this time last year, we raised maybe much amounts of money to help the blind people in America or around the world with Braille Qurans, and that was much appreciated. And we bought some Braille Qurans for the blind people with disabilities, and alhamdulillah, that was distributed. So please continue to help the channel grow. That'd be fantastic. Also, I just want to mention a lot of the analysts right now actually are saying that the war in Gaza, they can't see it ending. They can't see Hamas losing the war. And everybody has said this from day one, subhanallah. You can destroy buildings, but you cannot destroy the hearts of the people. You can't destroy their will to fight back against occupation. And it's sad. I'm sorry for going on a monologue. We've had people on here on our channel who claim to be Christians, and they seem to back the idea of the Zionist regime killing the Muslims. And it's shocking. If you watch some of my previous streams, you'll be shocked at some of the mentality of these people. deeply shocked. I'm sorry for that. Yeah, I'm definitely sorry for that monologue. But Brother Mustafa, I'll let you have a few words before we move on to John.
Thank you for this opportunity once more. It's been a very good show, alhamdulillah, and hope everybody's benefited in some capacity whilst we're in the luxury of our own abodes, while these unfortunate people are suffering. I mean, let's be fair, not just in Palestine, but anywhere in the world. If any human is suffering anywhere, then we need to call that out as well. We need to be better humans in every way, shape, or form. But as the Palestinian issue is tantamount to us and right in front of us, it just makes one wonder what the human being is all about. To be, a reflection of God in some capacity. Not that we believe that the human is analogous to God, but to represent God. But sometimes we can be the worst of creatures, which is a sad indictment on humanity. However, what I would encourage people to reflect upon is we as people, we're not limited. You've got the opportunity to become proactive and not defeatist in your thinking. So as the doctor mentioned, this is just the beginning. Parties such as the Brother Paul's party, the Workers' Party, is now really coming into fruition. I was totally unaware of who they were up until the lead up to the election, but it's becoming more popular. And I do believe that if we all work together, we can achieve things for the future. And we can only do what we're able to do. You see, our hands are tied. We don't have that power, but we can still stand up. Today's a protest, as I made mention, taking place in central London. People will say, well, what's the point as a result of so many protests taking place? But we've got to do our little bit in every way, shape, or form. And we will be accountable for whatever we do, whatever we say. And I would encourage people, not to take a defeatist attitude and to think of others, before thinking of ourselves as well. Prophet Muhammad, upon him be peace, has made explicit mention that you cannot be a true believer if you do not wish for yourself what you should also wish for your brother. So it's very important, you see, that we think along these lines and become active in such affairs which are going to affect us. I mean, let's not think for one moment these elections and future policies don't affect us. They will very, very carefully affect the future of your families, your offspring, and future generations as well. So yeah, delighted to have spoken to all the brothers on the platform, and look forward to having perhaps future shows in which we can speak about these issues.
Inshallah. You're always welcome. This is your house, Mustafa. MashaAllah, this is your house. You're always welcome. And God willing, we'll plan something in the future. I'd like to get you and Brother John having a nice discussion, because I find this intriguing. I really do. The topics that you talk and how deep you go into these topics and really open people's thought process. And unfortunately, these days, people just don't want to go and learn. They just want to be cabbages, and they need to reawaken their thought process and their brain cells. And God willing, you and Brother John, hopefully in the future, and everybody else, we can start that thought process is ticking over again, inshallah. John, final words to you before we wrap the show up.
Just echo those comments from yourself about Mustafa. It's been great having you in the show today, Mustafa. You talk very well. I think you stimulated the conversation fantastically. So thanks for coming. Hope to speak with you again. I just want to kind of just mention a couple of people's names, if I can, just local activists who might be watching the show: Mohammed Mullah, Maria Abwat Johnson, who've been fantastic in supporting me. I got involved in the Workers' Party and started to kind of wake up and take some action. I don't mind sharing with you that I was not in a good place. I was probably, I would say, depressed. So right now, this has energized me. My wife tells me I'm a lot more passionate, a lot more energetic, a lot more kind of engaging and so forth. In a little while, I'm going to do a little bit more of that engaging because I've got friends coming around at the moment for some food and things like that. But, we can't moan too much about our lives right now, because there's people still suffering out there, not, as you say, Mustafa, not just in Gaza. We have to wake other people up to what's going on at the moment. So, Mohammed, you mentioned about your kids, how their life falls apart when the goes down and things like that. We really need to kind of all think about what's important right now. And for me, in that I'm doing something all about the things that are wrong in the world. So there's something going on there. I can hear some strange sounds. So hopefully that's not from my side. But
No,
anyway,
that's from the march. John just sent
okay.
a clip from the march.
Yeah, sure, cool. So, yeah, the truth will set you free, and I think that I think we have to wake people up. Doesn't always feel good to hear the truth, but it sets you free because then your eyes are open to what is going on, and I think we need to wake people up. And hopefully, the more people that view the show and listen to these discussions, the more that will happen.
Yeah, thank you for that, John. Appreciate those kind words. I think Mustafa has to jump out because he's going to go to his stall he normally has outside the Stratford shopping centre. I think it's called Westfield, if I'm not correct, in London.
Yeah.
And he's very active in spreading Islam and talking to people. So, okay, concentrate on what is wrong here in the UK and the big. Okay, I'm just reading some of the comments, but nevertheless, thanks for watching. It's been a fascinating show. Really have learned a lot from everybody. And once again, guys, don't forget to like and subscribe and share. We need to get this message out, and this is where it's going to start from the grassroots. We need to share these streams on your WhatsApp groups, on your social media platforms, so we get, inshallah, God willing, a bigger audience. Because like I said, initially when I used to listen to George Galloway, his numbers were very small. Yeah, and for me, I was frustrated that I can understand the message that George Galloway is giving. Why don't anybody else understand the message that he's giving? What he said about Saddam Hussein, what he said about the war in Iraq, what he said regarding Afghanistan, he's turned out to be true. He was saying, but nobody will listen to him. And, brothers and sisters, we really need to get this message out. We really need to. I'm hoping one day, maybe even for 5 minutes or 10 minutes, to get George Galloway on here to give a little monologue, as he always does on his podcast called The Moats, and just to tell the people about his message. I find that his message is amazing. I do apologize. I'm looking into the mic here when I talk, and I'm reading your comments because they're on the right-hand side. So this is why, at the same time, I'm looking down that way. But nevertheless, guys, thank you for joining us. Paul, Dr. Mohmmed, John, thank you for joining me this morning. Keep up the great work, and hopefully I will see you soon.
Let's keep up that energy. Thanks ever so much again. And I just wanted one last time to congratulate John and Muhammad Ali. I'm very proud of what I did. And I think we made amazing achievements. Let's go forward. It's a long way to go, but we'll get there. Inshallah.
Inshallah. But like you said, this is the beginning. This is the beginning. Don't think this is the end. This is the beginning. So, keep going forward. The strides that you did, Paul, outside the Folsom Community Center, people saw who you were. Nobody else was there. So that's going to be in people's minds, especially the younger generation. You gave out the flyers. All your flyers went. You had a bag full of flyers, and all the flyers went, and your bag was a lot lighter. Because I asked you to put it down on the floor because I could see your shoulder leaning down like him, and and that will stay in people's minds. So great effort, guys. Keep it up, and God willing, I'll see you soon. Thank you for everybody for watching. This is your brother Mohmmed from Cover Vef, and don't forget, I've got my Rumble account just in case YouTube seems to don't work for me anymore. So check out my Rumble account. It's called Abu Shu'aib. And once again, thank you for watching. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh. Peace and blessings be upon everybody.
Wa alaikum assalam.